On the morning of my 35th birthday, I baked vanilla cupcakes, lit lavender candles, and laid out my grandmother's old porcelain plates, thinking it would be a quiet, meaningful day. It was just not in the way I ever imagined. My parents showed up first, then my younger brother Ethan, and of course Vanessa, my cousin who always dressed like she was auditioning for a reality show, even if it was just a backyard brunch. She handed me a gift-wrapped envelope with a smile as wide as her lip gloss. "Open it, Claire," my mother urged, her hands trembling slightly. "It's a special one." I opened it. Inside was a legal document, cold, heavy, and sharp as a knife. An eviction notice from my own home. The one I spent 5 years restoring. The one I poured my savings into. The one I rebuilt brick by brick after my life fell apart. I looked up. No one met my gaze, not even Ethan. That was the moment I realized. I wasn't just being pushed out of a house. I was being erased from my own life. Have you ever felt that kind of betrayal from people you trusted most? If this story strikes a chord, tell me in the comments. Would you fight back or walk away? And if you want to hear how I turned that moment into something none of them saw coming, stick around. You're about to see what happens when you take everything from the wrong woman. My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 35 years old, and until recently, I believed in two things: hard work and family. I'm an interior designer, freelance, not the flashy kind who flips million-dollar condos for TV, more like the kind who scours flea markets for forgotten treasures and spends weekends covered in paint dust, bringing life back into old wood and chipped walls. 5 years ago, after a brutal breakup and a burnout that nearly ended my career, I stumbled upon a crumbling, vine-covered house on Elmwood Street. It had once belonged to my great-uncle. The roof leaked. The windows were shattered. It smelled like mold and regret. But to me, it felt like a second chance. I made an offer the same day. The paperwork was complicated. My uncle had passed without updating the title. Technically, the property remained in the family trust, managed by my aunt and uncle Vanessa's parents. But I didn't think it mattered. Everyone knew I was restoring it. Everyone saw what I put into it. I moved in and got to work. Brick by brick, floorboard by floorboard. For 5 years, that house became my world. I repainted the walls with colors from childhood memories. I installed antique doorknobs that matched my grandmother's collection. I revived the backyard, turned it into a lavender garden that bloomed each summer. It wasn't just a house anymore. It was my history, my healing, my home. My parents visited a few times, but they never really understood why I clung to it. They called it that money pit, or said I should move into a condo downtown. Ethan, my younger brother, had drifted after college. He married young, had kids, and rarely came around. And then there was Vanessa. To anyone else, she seemed harmless, charming even. She always showed up at family events with perfectly curled hair, carefully chosen outfits, and a glass of wine in hand. But beneath the surface, she had a way of inserting herself where she didn't belong. She'd comment on the market value of my neighborhood, ask if I had a backup plan in case the property got too expensive to maintain. I thought she was just being nosy. I never imagined she was gathering intel. The truth is, I was so busy building a home that I didn't see what was falling apart around me. My family's silence, their subtle distance, and Vanessa's quiet positioning. When I planned my birthday party, I kept it small. Just the inner circle. The people I believe still had my back. I baked everything myself, cleaned every corner, strung lights across the backyard. I even arranged fresh lavender on the table cut that morning from my garden. I thought the day would be a celebration of everything I had rebuilt, not the beginning of it being taken away. So when I opened that silver-wrapped envelope and saw the word eviction printed in bold black ink, it wasn't just shock, it was heartbreak, the kind that rips through your chest like wind through broken windows. I stood there still holding the paper, looking around the room. No one moved, no one said a word. My mother looked at the floor. My father wouldn't meet my eyes. Ethan took a step back, and Vanessa. She was smiling. Not kindly, but like someone who just won. That was the moment something broke inside me. Not just trust, but the illusion that I ever truly belonged to them. And when I finally spoke, it wasn't with anger, it was with clarity. "This is my house," I said, voice trembling but steady. "You all might have forgotten that, but I haven't," and quietly, I began to plan. Because if they thought I'd just hand over my life without a fight, They didn't know me at all. I didn't cry. Not that day, not that night. After everyone left after I watched my own parents and brother walk out without so much as a real explanation, I sat alone in my armchair by the window. The sun had dipped below the roofline, and the last of the birthday candles had burned out. On the coffee table in front of me, the eviction notice lay like a loaded weapon, still warm from my hands. Still unreal. I should have fallen apart, but I didn't. Instead, I started connecting dots. Why had Vanessa been visiting more often lately? Why all the questions about property value? Why did my parents suddenly seem distant over the past few months? And then it hit me. She'd been planting seeds, positioning herself. Every smile, every toast, every hug at a family barbecue. A performance. I reached for my phone and dialed the only person who had never once lied to me. Madeline. We met in college. We once spent 2 straight days building a bookshelf out of recycled barnwood and stubbornness. If anyone knew the work I had put into this house, it was her. She picked up after 3 rings. Claire, no small talk. I said, I need you. Bring your laptop. Bring those renovation files. All of them. Less than an hour later, she was on my porch, hoodie, backpack, and the same fire in her eyes that I remembered from our college days. She didn't ask questions, just hugged me, then walked in, set up her laptop, and got to work. I backed everything up, she said. Every blueprint, every permit, every before and after photo. Good thing I never deleted them. I leaned over her shoulder. The folder was there, clear as day, building permits, contractor receipts, signed approvals from the city, real legal mine. But here's where things started to twist. Vanessa told my parents that I was doing unpermitted renovations, I explained. She even showed them documents, but they never let me see them. Madeline's fingers paused over the keyboard. You think she forged them? I nodded. And if she did, then this isn't just a family betrayal, it's criminal. I texted Ethan. We hadn't really talked in months, but I knew if there was even a sliver of him left that remembered who we were as kids before all this, he might still listen. I kept it simple. We need to talk alone tomorrow, 8 a.m. Cornerstone Cafe. He replied minutes later, okay, I'll be there. The next morning I got to the cafe early. It was raining lightly, the kind of Portland morning that felt like time was suspended in soft gray mist. Ethan showed up right on time. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept. I didn't waste time. You knew, didn't you? He didn't lie. Yeah, he said softly. About 2 weeks ago, Vanessa told Mom and Dad that the house was a legal risk, that you could get sued. She showed them forms, complaints from neighbors, old building code violations. They were scared. I slid a folder across the table. Every single permit, verified, legal. I followed every rule. Ethan flipped through the papers. His face drained of color. She lied to me. He whispered, to all of us. There's more, I said. Vanessa's not doing this for the family. She's doing it for a deal. She wants to sell the house. Fast, quietly. Probably to that boyfriend of hers. Noah Harper. Ethan blinked. Harper Dad mentioned him. Said he's into real estate. Exactly, I said. This whole thing was planned. I looked him in the eye. I need your help. He hesitated, then nodded. Better late than never. Back at home, Madeline and I kept digging. She reached out to a contact, Elena, who worked at the city's land records office. Elena agreed to meet us at the public library that evening, and what she showed us cracked the case wide open. A copy of the neighbor complaint. No original file, no case number, no matching resident and city records. Fake Vanessa had submitted fabricated documents to convince my family that I was in legal trouble. Madeline snapped photos of every page. This is forgery, she whispered. I felt my chest tighten. This wasn't just about taking a house. This was a coordinated, premeditated con. And I was done playing nice, because now I wasn't just going to save my home. I was going to expose everything. That night I didn't sleep. I sat by the window in the living room, right where the late sun used to cast gold across the floor, staring at the folder of evidence we'd gathered. Blueprints, permits, photographs, forged complaints. Everything was real, everything was mine, and somehow it was all still under threat. At 2:14 a.m., a sound broke the stillness. Glass shattering, I rushed outside. My car window was smashed in. A rock lay on the front seat wrapped in a piece of paper. 3 words scrawled in shaky handwriting, Back off now. No name, no signature, but I didn't need one. This was no longer a family dispute, it was war. I called the police, filed a report, installed security cameras the next morning. But fear wasn't the thing that stuck with me. What lingered was clarity. Vanessa had shown her hand, and I was going to flip the table. Later that day, I received an email from Elena, subject line, signature verification results. Urgent. I opened it with trembling hands. After comparing signatures on the land survey with official property tax records, we've confirmed that the documents contain forged signatures of Mr. and Mrs. Bennett. I stared at those words, fists clenched. It was our first solid, indisputable proof. I called Madeline immediately. It's time to build our strategy. That night in my kitchen over coffee and a half-eaten cinnamon roll, we laid out our plan. Step 1. Gather all materials proving fraud and forgery. Step 2. Trace connections between Vanessa and Harper and Bloom. Step 3. Stop the development before they touch a single brick of my house. But we needed more. Madeline made a call to a friend, Leela, who worked at the city's historic preservation office. If my house qualified as a historic structure, any demolition would require months of approval. That alone could buy us time. 2 days later, we got our answer. Leela met us at the back porch holding a file and a clipboard. Claire, she said, flipping to the final page. You may not know this, but your home is one of the oldest remaining craftsman bungalows in the Elmwood district. The woodwork, the original layout, everything aligns with preservation criteria. She smiled. I can get it flagged for review. It'll put a freeze on any development. I exhaled the first real breath in days. We had a shield, but Vanessa wasn't done that same evening. I found a cardboard box on my porch. No name, no return address. Inside, photos, dozens of them. Every room in my home, kitchen, bedroom, stairwell, attic, all recently taken. All marked with red X's. The worst part, they were taken from inside the house. I locked every door. Changed the locks that same night. Ethan called my mom, asked if anyone had borrowed a spare key. She hesitated, then said, Vanessa asked for it last week. Said she needed measurements for her engagement party. Of course. That's when she planned to announce the deal. Introduce Noah to investors. Close the circle. She was turning my erasure into a celebration. But that's where she made her biggest mistake. Because now I knew when she'd strike. And I knew exactly how I'd strike back. I contacted my old lawyer, Sarah Holtz, a woman with sharp eyes, sharper instincts, and a memory like a vault. She had helped me with city permits before. When I showed her everything, Elena's signature report, the fake complaint letters, the notary stamp from a retired official who just so happened to be Vanessa's mother, Sarah closed the file and looked me in the eye. This is bigger than family betrayal. Claire, this is organized real estate fraud. I nodded. I don't just want to stop them. I want the truth seen. Publicly, Sarah leaned back, arms crossed. Then we go where they never expect, to the engagement party. I raised an eyebrow. She continued. You're not on the guest list, right? So we'll get you in. I wasn't sure how until the next day I received a text from an unknown number. Claire, I know what Vanessa did. Meet me at Hazel and Birch Cafe, 5 p.m. Sophie Harper, Noah's younger sister, the one no one ever noticed, the one with a front row seat to everything and nothing to lose. I stared at the screen. This wasn't just personal anymore. It was structural, strategic, systemic. Vanessa had built a web of lies, but I just found the first thread loose enough to unravel the whole thing. And I was ready to pull. At exactly 5 p.m., I walked into Hazel and Birch Cafe. The air smelled like cinnamon and cedarwood. A jazz playlist hummed low in the background. In the far corner, she was already waiting. Sophie Harper. No makeup, gray coat. Shoulders tense like she'd been carrying secrets for far too long. She didn't smile when I sat down. She didn't offer pleasantries. She simply slid a USB drive across the table and whispered, "This is everything." I stared at it for a moment. What's on it? Blueprints, emails, developer memos, conversations between Noah and Vanessa, including a full strategy outline for a luxury apartment complex. Right where your house stands. My jaw tightened. You're just giving me this? Sophie nodded, her voice low. I'm not proud of what my brother's become. I used to admire him. But now all I see is manipulation, profit over people. And Vanessa. She's dangerous. She thinks if it looks perfect, no one will ask questions. I leaned in. Why help me now? Sophie looked me dead in the eye. Because I know what it's like to be silenced in your own family, and I'm done staying quiet. She handed me one more item, a heavy embossed envelope. Formal invitation to the engagement party. I was in charge of press invites. This one was extra. I took it. For the first time in weeks, I felt the scales shift. Back at my house that night, Sarah, Madeline, Ethan, and I mapped everything out. USB contents. Verified. Sophie even included a recorded Zoom meeting between Vanessa and Noah, discussing how they'd push the property through city approvals, using forged notary stamps, ones from Noah's old contact, who turned out to be Vanessa's mother, recently retired. That was our linchpin forgery illegal transfer intent. Development backed by deception, but we needed more. Sarah began assembling a complete legal dossier, the fake neighbor complaint, the fabricated city forms, signature verification results, photos of every room marked with red X6, and the notarization from a retired official. Then Sophie called again. She had something else, something we didn't expect. An audio recording. Vanessa's voice cool and calculated. Let them think Claire's breaking building codes. Once the house loses legal protection, we buy it for pennies. After the engagement party, nothing can stop us. Then Noah's voice chimed in. I've already wiped the internal records. No one will trace it back. I closed my eyes as the file ended. My chest felt like it had caved in, but I wasn't scared. I was focused. We're going to play this out, I told them. At the party, we're going to reveal it in front of everyone, investors, media, their friends, their future clients. Madeline looked at me, uncertain. Are you sure? I nodded. They wanted a spotlight. Let's give them one, just not the kind they expected. Sarah backed everything up to a second drive. Sent one to the city's legal department, one to a journalist she trusted, and one, just in case anything happened. Then we rehearsed. If the presentation was going to hit, it had to be flawless. Intro documents, audio delivery timing. Sarah would handle the legal backup. Ethan would stand by for questions. Sophie would be on crowd control. The night before the party, I ironed a black dress. Simple, elegant, not flashy, but rooted. Confident, quiet strength. I pulled out a pearl necklace from a small velvet box, one that belonged to my grandmother. She used to say, style doesn't speak the loudest. It just never has to explain itself. The morning of the engagement party, a final message slid into my inbox. No name, no greeting, just 5 words. Stop now or lose everything. I showed it to Sarah. She didn't even blink. They're scared, she said. Good, let them be. That evening, the Bellcrest Grand Hotel sparkled with chandeliers and the sound of polite laughter. Glasses clinked, strings played guests, arrived in designer gowns and rented tuxedos. And there at the center, Vanessa and Noah, picture perfect, beaming, drunk on admiration. Until I walked in, Vanessa froze. Claire, she said, eyebrows raised. I held up the invitation. Wouldn't miss it for the world. She tried to block me, but I walked past straight to the AV booth. Straight to the screen, and with one calm tap on a wine glass, I got everyone's attention. If I may have a moment, I said, voice clear and even. Before dinner begins, there's something everyone here deserves to know. All eyes turned toward me, some confused, some annoyed, a few clearly curious. Vanessa shifted uncomfortably at the center of the room, still trying to smile as if nothing was wrong, but her knuckles whitened around the stem of her champagne flute. Noah whispered something into her ear. Her expression didn't change, but I saw it. The flicker of panic behind her eyes. I lifted my glass, tapped gently once more, then set it down. Thank you for letting me speak, I said calmly. I know this isn't what you expected tonight, but sometimes the truth arrives uninvited. I turned to the AV team behind me and gave a small nod. The lights dimmed. The projector lit up. On the screen appeared the blueprint: Willow Heights Luxury Residences. Proposed site: 812 Elmwood Street. My address. A collective gasp rippled through the room. I took a step forward. That property, I said, is my home. The home I spent 5 years restoring. The home I was evicted from on my birthday. By the very people you see standing at the center of this celebration. Vanessa's mask cracked. Noah grabbed her arm, trying to hold composure. The screen changed. Next slide. Land survey documents. Fake neighbor complaints. Signatures, city permits. All of these, I continued, were used to justify removing me from my home. They were shown to my parents, my brother, to the city. But every one of them, every page is either falsified or outright forged. Murmurs turned into buzzing whispers. Someone from the crowd spoke up. "Do you have proof?" I smiled. "I thought you might ask." Sarah stepped forward from the edge of the room, dressed in charcoal gray, calm and exact. "My name is Sarah Holtz. I'm Miss Bennett's legal counsel," she said. Voice firm. "We've had these documents verified by the City Records Office, the Notary Public Licensing Board, and independent handwriting analysts." She held up copies. "Not only are the signatures on these papers fraudulent, but the notary stamp used belongs to a woman who legally retired over a year ago. Vanessa Sterling's own mother." Now the room buzzed with gasps. Vanessa stepped forward. "This is ridiculous," she hissed, voice tight. "She's twisting everything." "Oh," I said, "let's hear it from you then." I pressed play on the final slide. An audio recording filled the speakers. Vanessa's voice clear as crystal. "Once the house is stripped of legal protection, we'll move in. Claire won't fight, she's sentimental. Predictable. After the party, everything will be in our hands." Then Noah's voice. "I've scrubbed the internal files. No one will trace it back to us." The ballroom went silent, utterly uncomfortably silent. Noah dropped Vanessa's hand. She turned toward him, whispering urgently, but he backed away from the side of the room. Another voice spoke up. "Sophie." She walked out slowly, confidently, and said, "I recorded that call because I refuse to be part of their lies." Vanessa froze. "You little," but it was too late. Two plainclothes officers stepped through the side entrance, badges discreetly shown. One approached Vanessa. "Ms. Sterling," he said, "you're under investigation for fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to commit unlawful property acquisition. We ask for your cooperation." She turned back to me, eyes wide with fury. "You'll regret this," she spat. I held her gaze. "Calm, you've already made me regret too much. That ends tonight." The officers guided her gently but firmly out of the room. Noah, he wasn't arrested. But the damage had been done. Investors began backing away from him. Some left without a word. Others shook their heads in visible disgust. Randall Morris, the lead investor, approached the podium. He placed the printed blueprint onto the table with a hard thud. "Harper & Bloom is finished," he said. "I won't put another dime into a company built on lies." Noah looked as if the floor had opened beneath him. I stepped back from the mic. The lights brightened. The string quartet had stopped playing. The party was over and in its place. The truth finally stood where it belonged. Center stage. Outside the hotel, I stood under the cool spring sky. Sarah handed me a sealed folder. "The Department of Justice and city officials will follow up," she said. "Your case is strong. You'll keep your home, and more importantly, your name has been cleared." Ethan stood nearby, silent. When I looked at him, he said, "Just 4 words. I'm proud of you." I nodded. Once I didn't need more than that. Vanessa wanted a perfect night. She got a reckoning instead. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt like myself again. 6 weeks after the night, everything unraveled. Spring returned to Elmwood Street. The lavender I thought would die bloomed early this year, tiny purple bursts lining the garden beds I once planted with trembling hands and hopeful plans. The Rickman house, my house, still stood. Not just as a structure, but as a statement, a memory reclaimed, a truth defended. The court had ruled in my favor: forgery, fraud, and false notarization. Vanessa received a suspended sentence, along with a 5-year ban from working in real estate or handling financial documentation. Noah resigned quietly from Harper & Bloom. The company, crippled by lawsuits and public backlash, faded from the spotlight it once chased so ruthlessly. But what surprised me most wasn't the fall of those who betrayed me. It was who stood by me after the dust settled. Ethan came by every Saturday with his kids. He helped me repaint the old white fence, replace a cracked step on the porch, and even planted lilies beside the lavender. We didn't talk about what happened, not directly, but sometimes. Silence speaks just enough. Madeline, of course, never left. She brought coffee and floor tile samples, pitching ideas for what we called Phase 2 of the house revival. Not to sell, not to flip, just to live, to breathe new memories into old walls. Sophie Harper, Noah's sister, resigned from the company, and with Madeline's help, co-founded a local heritage preservation fund. One day she showed up with a bronze plaque. I stared at it speechless. It read, "The Bennett House, a living legacy of Elmwood Street. She smiled. You didn't just save a house, Claire. You saved part of the city's soul, and she was right. This place, every chipped brick, every creaky stair was no longer just mine. It belonged to everyone who believed in starting over with both hands, dirty and both feet planted. Even my parents eventually came around. They moved to a quieter suburb. One afternoon my mother dropped by. No makeup, no excuses, just a small wooden box. I found this in your grandmother's thing, she said. Inside was an old hairbrush carved from walnut wood. She used to sit on this porch and brush my hair while telling me that this house was magic. I didn't speak. I just reached out and held her hand. Forgiveness doesn't need permission. Sometimes it just walks in quietly and takes a seat. Then there was the unexpected visitor, Max Harper. No cameras, no arrogance. Just him at my gate looking like a man who'd finally run out of moves. I'm not here to apologize, he said. Because I know that doesn't fix anything. I stayed silent, but I've stepped down. Sophie told me what you're building here. The fund. The mission. If you'll let me, I'd like to contribute, no strings attached. Quietly. I didn't smile, I didn't soften, but I did nod. Not because I forgive you, I said, but because some things deserve to start again. Only from zero. We shook hands like two people who had finally seen each other clearly one last time. And that was enough. Weeks later, I hosted a backyard dinner. Nothing fancy, no string quartet, no media. Just laughter under warm lights. Stories passed across a table of mismatched plates and shared history. Sophie brought a framed photo of my grandmother standing in the garden. Ethan raised his glass and said to Claire, who didn't just fight for a house, but reminded us what it means to come home. We all clinked glasses, but mine stayed in my hand a moment longer. I looked up at the old cherry tree lights wrapped around its limbs like memories that refused to fade. And I knew this house, this fight, had been about more than ownership or land or legal documents. It had been about worth, identity, voice. It had been about saying no one takes from me what I've built with love. And now I hadn't just kept my home, I had reclaimed myself, brick by brick, truth by truth, moment by moment, and I would never let anyone tear that down again. Sometimes the greatest betrayal doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the people who know the layout of your home, but never bothered to understand the architecture of your heart. I was handed an eviction notice on my birthday by my own family. They thought I'd crumble, that I'd walk away quietly, that I'd let go of the house I built with my bare hands and a stubborn heart. But here's what they didn't understand. You can't evict someone from their purpose. You can't bulldoze a home built with love. And you can't silence someone who's finally found her voice. This wasn't just about a house. It was about standing your ground when the world says, give up, about refusing to let lies rewrite your story, about choosing truth even when it costs you everything. And in doing so, I didn't just protect four walls. I reclaimed a legacy, I rediscovered my worth, and I rebuilt something unshakable myself. What would you have done in my place? Would you have walked away or stood and fought? Let me know in the comments. If you believe that standing up for yourself is always worth it, drop a number 1 below. If you believe forgiveness is strength, type number 7. And if this story moved you in any way, share it, because someone out there might be sitting in silence thinking they're alone. They're not. You're not. Follow this channel for more real, raw stories every week. Because sometimes the most powerful stories begin with someone simply refusing to be erased.